presentation.
Hey everybody, welcome back to No Flicks Given. Sort of a skeleton crew we got this week. So it's just Frank and Matt. Connor and Peter are indisposed. I feel like every episode we do, we lose more and more people. So I think...
It's just the universe is just shrinking before too long. It's just going to be you talking to yourself alone.
It's just me in that old person room at the end of Space Odyssey, just growing by myself. We thought we would do something a little bit different and kind of, because there's so many things that we'll watch between episodes or on our own or whatnot, and they might not merit like a full episode in their own right, but we definitely wanted to like touch on a few things that Matt and I have each kind of separately. There's some overlap, but have gone through and watched recently that we just wanted to sort of touch on and talk about a bit. Hopefully everyone finds that interesting, but yeah, let's just kind of get into it. So Matt, well, first of all, how are you? I don't want to be rude.
Oh, I'm all right. It's the spring has sprung. My allergies are haywire.
Oh yeah. Mine are out of control.
Yeah. Every night, I think now I wake up just like having to at least blow my nose and like pop an allergy pill or something.
I am at that point where I'm actually debating like allergy shots, like becoming one of those people, which I feel like are those like, it's like our version of the super rich people who like go to Sweden to replace their skin every 5 years or whatever the fuck those people, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
We know they do it.
Yeah, come on.
But what do you got? What do you want to start us off with?
I figured I'll get the movies out of the way because I frankly haven't been watching a lot of like actual honest to God movies. But of the ones that have stuck with me in the last month or two, one of them is George Miller's 3,000 Years of Longing. Did you hear about this one?
No, but I've heard about it. I really wanted to see it. It's on my short list, and it was just one that I just didn't get around to in theaters.
We were perusing through, I think it's on Amazon or something, but just deciding what we were going to watch for the night, and it seemed colorful and interesting, and it was directed by George Miller, so it had, no matter what, I wasn't going to be bored. And that ultimately held true. So the premise for anybody who's not familiar is that it's Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba. Tilda Swinton is a mythological historian of some sort who happens upon a genie's lamp while she's traveling abroad, and it becomes a mix of almost like 1,001 Nights of telling stories back and forth, and then still a bit of like, what do you do with the genie? Because the original trick of the genie is a lot like the cat's paw of like, or the monkey's paw of like, you make a wish, but it's going to not turn out the way that you want it to turn out to be.
Oh, that's like the original lore, I guess, with it?
The whole point of a genie is to trick you during the wish.
It's an actual genie, right?
Yes. It's okay. A djinn.
They're the same thing, right? Okay.
And so... It's really interesting. I enjoy it. It was really visually intriguing, but it's like a series of vignettes over the course of 2 hours, over the course of the genie's life, and just how he came upon Tilda Swinton's character and the things that he's learned over the course of his 3,000-year life.
I kept waiting for that to have a bigger footprint. And it kind of just came and went, at least in my circle. I don't really know.
It wasn't it? I feel like it was a movie that was shot just before or just somewhere around pretty much lockdown. So it was in that weird period of time where there was...
Tom Cruise is yelling at people.
Yeah, like some of that stuff might have been going on, but also I think that the appetite for weird... movies that aren't tentpole franchises, for the theater
everyone wanted
audience.
Like guilty pleasure stuff, like fast food of movies and TV. I get it. I wanted it. I didn't see this movie,
but I mean, I would recommend it. I think it's a great. It's a story about stories and storytelling, and that's what I think I appreciated most about it. And it's kooky, and you're never bored during it. And I think that it's worth watching it. And if you know anything about George Miller, this is the same guy who did, of course, Happy Feet, and
Well, that's not usually the first. It's not usually the first one you go to when you're talking about George Miller.
This is true.
You're not wrong.
Yeah,
but
I'm not wrong. I was trying to think of one of the other ones that was a little off kilter that wasn't a Mad Max movie, and I can't.
Babe 2, Peg in the City.
Oh fuck
obviously.
Yeah! Did he do the sequel,
Yeah.
or was it just the first one?
He just did the sequel. He didn't. I don't think he did the first one. That's what makes that so strange.
Fucking weird.
I have to look it up because I don't want to be. That's a big thing to be wrong.
Yeah, the internet might get mad at you.
No, he did not. He did not direct Babe. He wrote it though, so that's
Okay.
That is a little something.
At some point, I hope
That's
someone
awesome.
does a documentary about him because his career has just been so weird. And
They really need to get more interviews in with him because there's got to be so much to talk about, and I feel like he's always been such a has not found his way into the limelight of the Spielbergs and the Lucases or he's just not someone who's much of a his movies speak for themselves, I guess. So he doesn't really.
yeah.
He'll do plenty of press tours and whatnot, but he's just I rarely see it's hard for me to even picture him.
Yeah,
because of how
I just
little-
know he's like a 70-something-year-old white guy. I think that's about
Yeah.
from Australia, and that's his other big,
That'll do, Piggly. That'll do.
But yeah, I
That's
would
great,
recommend it. It was worth the 2 hours and change that it was, and it's a shame that which is an often refrain for our show, but it's a shame that they don't make more movies like this where you're just kind of taking a chance
know.
on a story.
I know. I hope we get back to that, but it's not looking good. Also, I'm realizing the pedestal we put ourselves on, where the audience is going to see the drastic differences between the tastes of some of our hosts, because I want to do more of these, and you're going to learn pretty quickly who brings what flavors to the pot. On a completely unrelated note, I watched the 90s slasher film Urban Legend, something that
Oh, the oldie goodie.
nobody really even remembers happened. It was in that weird period of right after Scream, and they were just kind of trying to capitalize on it. It was the same kind of time as I Know What You Did Last Summer, and I guess The Faculty is in there too. A lot of these sort of trying to be more clever with the slasher genre because of what Scream did, but this is holy fucking, this is terrible. This is so. The gimmick is it takes place at a prep school, and the killer is killing people based on literally urban legends. The problem is you realize in the movie urban legend as a term is kind of this wide ranging something urban legends don't have a consistent theme among them.
No.
They're just it doesn't work as a concept for a murderer, because I kept trying to think of what the thing they were going for. I couldn't even think of urban legends for them to rip off for these kills.
The only urban legend when someone says urban legend, the one that always comes into mind is whatever variation it is of the man with the hook hand in the car.
See, that I don't think they do the hook hand thing, and that's where my brain went, where I'm is that an urban legend? But instead, they mean urban legends more in the term of if you eat Pop Rocks and Coca-Cola, your stomach will explode. That doesn't happen, but that's they have one of the teachers has a class on urban legends to kind of set it up, and
the
that's
Bloody
one
Mary mirror thing, I guess.
that's part of it too, but it's more the things they were
what's
using
an
as urban
example
legends.
of one of the kills that's an urban legend according to this film? Spoiler alert for a 30-year-old movie, by the way.
I can't stress enough how fast this movie left my brain. Let me look it up quick because it'll come back to me.
Was it a Dimension picture?
It feels like it would have been, but I'm actually not sure. Robert
only
Englund
Dimension-
shows up in it, though. I forgot about that. I should mention.
Because I feel like only Dimension had that particular film stock, and I know that everybody who knows what I'm talking about, when you think of The Faculty or Scream,
Yes.
it's just, there was that texture to it that only
Which
Dimension pictures had.
I'm a huge fan of that texture, and I think I said that in the Faculty episode we recorded years ago.
Almost certainly.
Yeah. But let's see. Let me try to find one really quick. They
I like how none of the kills stuck with you after watching a horror movie. Like the one thing it's supposed to do.
Urban legends depicted in the film. Oh my God! Thank you, Wikipedia. It's its own subsection. This is great.
Oh, lovely. Okay.
They do at one point. They do try to invoke Bloody Mary at some point. It doesn't. It's not like it is a twist on itself.
Yeah.
There is this recurring thing where someone will like drive a car on the road with their headlights turned off, and then try to get a car, like if a car is coming towards you, they'll like flash the lights to try to run someone off the road. Again, I don't know how that's an urban legend or anything.
That's just a shitty thing to do.
Honestly, I'm like looking here and all of these, like everything in this section does not. One of them is that they mentioned replacing birth control with baby aspirin. That I don't know what that is.
These are just bad pranks. Like that. That's what it sounds like.
It doesn't like if I can't stress enough the frustration of like them not getting like you came up with urban legends as your like playground, and it doesn't. It's not a. They're not urban legends.
No,
the only one I could really think of is the Pop Rocks thing. Really, and then there's one point where the killer calls. I'm blanking on the actor's name, but he was Michael Rosenbaum. He was Lex Luthor in Smallville. He's kind of the. He's not the murderer, but he is kind of the Stu character from Scream. He's like a mix of Stu and Randy, because he's the one who kind of like is smart with stuff, and he's talking to the killer, and he keeps trying to outsmart the killer on like the urban legend that the killer is going to kill him with, and I swear to God, this is played for like a horror moment.
This is the one about the babysitter, right? She's getting those scary, harassing phone calls, and she traces them back. They're coming from inside the house, right? But Assway, aren't you forgetting something? I'm not babysitting any kids.
Wrong legend. This is the one about the old lady who dries her wet dog in the microwave.
You're like, that's not at all a thing that.
No,
it's like a clever like, oh my God, the killer like got like, it's just weird. It's just a frustrating movie, but luckily Jared Leto's in it and he's terrible, so that's saves the day.
Did he come in and say it's urban legending time?
No. It's it's a shame. There's also, I kind of watched it because I thought the killer's like look was what do you think the killer looks like in urban legend? If your brain
I see. This is the other thing is I feel like I vaguely remember seeing like the poster or the trailer for it, but then I'm like, oh no, wait, I know what you did that last summer.
Oh, okay.
So I keep imagining a hooded figure with like a knife or something.
So that is the look in urban legend, but apparently my brain remembered a fencing mask, like when you're a fencer in high school or college.
Yeah.
That is the killer's mask, which I was like, oh, that's at least cool. It's something different.
Yeah.
Apparently that's from the sequel to Urban Legend. I think it's called Urban Legend Final Cut. And I was like, fuck, the one thing that I was like, at least I'll see like an interesting killer look. They didn't even do. But
does the killer, it's just hooded figure, that's it?
It's just a hooded figure. There, it's a coat that belongs to every faculty member. So it's this like red herring thing of who's kind of in on it or whatnot.
What is the motive? Just they're crazy.
Yeah, it's basically the I know what you did last summer motive. Basically,
somebody fucked up before and now I'm making you pay for it.
Yeah, and I guess when they did the twist, it wasn't someone I was necessarily like. There's only like 5 characters, but like. It wasn't someone that I was like, I spent a lot of time being suspicious of, so that was at least something.
Right. Yeah.
But never watch it. No,
okay, I was going to say, so not a recommend from you then.
No, it's not even, because it's just frustrating because like, it should be, it's an easy movie to like, even if you're going to make it bad, like you have to still do the couple, like you still got to be a little clever with your kills and you got to do some tension properly. And it's just like, it feels so like lazy and like first gear. Like it's just not trying to do much. So,
well, from my end, which way I can pivot in one of two ways. I can pivot in the mystery angle or the thriller horror angle, depending on where you're feeling from going off of urban legend.
Well, I'm trying to think of where I'm pivoting after that. So I guess thriller horror.
Okay, so thriller horror.
Oh God.
So one of my favorite pastimes when I lived with my roommate Meg, former guest of the Give It 5 show, was we would just get drunk and watch bad horror movies. Mm-hmm. So they moved back to Jersey City after a while having to live upstate. And so her and her boyfriend hosted me, and we were like, yeah, let's just get drunk and watch horror movies. And one of the movies that came up was just so bizarre. We had never heard of it. It was called, so it's a 2014 film called Anna or Mindscape.
Oh, I have no idea what this is.
Starring Mark Strong and Tessa Farmiga.
Oh,
with a not cameo, but like a bit role by Brian Cox, because of course there's a bit role by Brian Cox.
Oh, I see that. Oh,
so
God, what is this?
It's so this was the thing that we were trying to figure out the entire movie, is that it looks like it was a bunch of British people trying to shoot a movie that takes place in like the Hamptons or upstate New York. So it and what we found out later was that it was a Spanish-made film shot in Spain, but everything is set in the United States.
So none of them have British accents?
No, they're all using fake American accents. One of the back and forth favorites that I have is every time Mark Strong answers a phone, you hear "hello." And
this cast is interesting though.
So that's what makes it compelling. Is so it's the premise is we're in a sort of speculative future where there are essentially memory empaths, people who can like hone in on people and walk them through memories to like learn things and work through trauma and all sorts of other shit. So like Mark Strong is one of these dudes whose wife is of course just died, and he's trying to do one last job so he can save the house. So Brian Cox assigns him to this girl who's going to be committed if he can't figure out what's wrong with her. And so there's this whole sequence of him like hanging out with, at this point, like 17-year-old Tessa Farmiga, going through her memories of like why she was expelled from school and all of this other crap. And it's just so weird and awkward, but you can't look away because you don't understand the mindset of the person who just continued forward with the story being like, yeah, no, this makes sense. Yeah, we're good with this. There is, of course, a twist ending. I almost want you to watch it, so I don't necessarily want to reveal it. But like,
it sounds like it's 82 minutes. So yeah, I'll definitely.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing is like it was, and so at the end of the day, it was wacko, and we enjoyed ourselves thoroughly watching it. It's not good at its job of being a thriller. Mm-hmm. But it's just this weird, compelling, interesting concept, strange execution, and a lot of very fake American accents.
Right.
So I would, if that's something up your alley of just like kind of watching a movie that's not great but it's entertaining, it's totally worth your time. Especially since
I already added it to my watch list on Letterboxd, so that's definitely
and it's Mark Strong turning a rare performance as a protagonist, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, I mean he's so good at villains, but I always like to see him do a little bit more. I mean he's great in the Kingsman movies. I feel like killing him off in the second was like kind of like the dumbest thing they could have done in an already terrible movie.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that movie made a lot of mistakes.
That we don't have to talk about it, but that movie confounds me fully. Like I don't get why it does not work at all. And I really want to spend some time like dissecting that, but I know it's going to be brutal because it's an oddly tough watch for a movie that should be identically.
It's also long, isn't it?
They're all long. I mean, Kingsman 1 is like over 2.5 hours, I think, or maybe it's 2:20. I don't know.
Yeah.
Pivoting from there is one that I had just not gotten around to. And it's one a lot of people have seen, so we don't have to touch on it for long. But Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the 74 one. I had never really seen.
The infamous.
Delightful. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that sucks because that part was ruined for me, but it's other than that, it was like, it's so fun to watch. Like, I like within the last year, I watched The Hills Have Eyes from the 70s as well. And like watching horror movies right before a lot of horror staples got embedded in culture, right before Halloween, right before Jaws, and right before like Alien, like all this stuff where like, it's just like, they're so, you can see they're like, oh my God, you guys are drawing freehand? This is crazy. Like, this is insane. And Invasion by Snatchers is really good. For it being a horror film that does not really have the parameters at the time of like what modern horror would have. And just watching that cast too, the four of them, like Leonard Nimoy's in it, Jeff Goldblum, obviously Donald Sutherland. Like, it is just like crazy to see the three of them on screen together, just having like full scenes. It must have been like an awesome production.
Did anything come from that movie, like that crew? Like, did they do a franchise, or did like the director go on and do anything crazy?
It was directed by Philip Kaufman. I think I looked this guy up right after I watched the movie. He was a writer on Raiders of the Lost Ark. He a lot of weird. Oh, he's got a lot of writing credits because of Indiana Jones. So let me see here. Not a ton. I don't know a single. There's an Unbearable Lightness of Being in the 80s. Something called Henry and June, Rising Sun. I don't know any of these movies. Something called Twisted, which looks a lot like your type of the Mark Strong movie you just mentioned, except this one has Samuel Jackson, Ashley Judd, and Andy Garcia.
Yeah, that's an interesting cast.
But no, not too much. I think he was an older statesman by the time he did, not super old, but I think it wasn't like a young filmmaker or, a young group. It was just like a studio production that was just like, oh yeah, we're remaking a classic 50s B movie.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that is mostly the one that people remember. I doubt that there's very many
for sure.
who are like, oh, the one from the 50s? It's like, well, I mean, we know that it's the same thing of like, oh yeah, you mean like the original Thing? It's like, come on.
Have you seen the original Thing?
I have not. My understanding is it has very little to do with the remake.
Yeah, it's there's almost nothing to do with it. It's like a vegetable monster that's basically amounts to a basically Frankenstein. It's just like that's pretty much it. But one of the interesting things is Howard Hawks was one of the directors and writers, so it has this weird like flair to it. It's just like one notch where you're like, oh, that's got a little more life than these movies normally have. It's worth watching. It's super short and super harmless, and the basic idea is they do the thing where it like falls from space and they go out into the ice. So there's a lot of similarities, except the monster is different, basically. It's worth checking out, I think.
Right on.
It's a totally harmless watch. It's
Yeah. Speaking of The Thing, have you and I talked about The Things?
What's The Things?
The Things is a short story. I forget who wrote it.
From the one from the point of view of the Thing. I love this so much.
For anyone who's not
creeps me
familiar,
out.
I don't know. I off of the top of my head, I don't remember who wrote it, but it is the events of the 1982 movie The Thing from the perspective of the Thing, and it's great. It's so alien and like disturbing, but also like, oh, that makes sense if that's your perspective. It's a really cool version of like what's
it's written in like the perspective is like fifth person omniscient. Like it's just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because it's the thing is like all of the things at the same time and only one of them. So it's the tense it speaks in is so like off, like it just throws you off axis.
Yeah, it's really it's a good, relatively easy but engrossing read.
Yeah.
But would you recommend people watch the 70s Invasion of the Body Snatchers?
Oh God, yeah.
Okay.
It's one of the best. It's an amazing movie. It's not terribly scary. It's so dulled by like today's sense, but it's like the Pod People movie, and it's like pretty. It's one of those movies where it's like, oh, so many other movies have done this concept that it's hard to go back. Like it's in that category of like movies that an episode of a Nickelodeon show in the 90s would have like spoofed, and you're like, oh, that's how I like learned. It's in that wheelhouse.
I could swear that there's an episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark that's doing Body
I'm so sure they went through and were like, how do you do this movie as an episode? But
do it 90s in Canada. Okay. I guess. Well, I have one more movie and I got two more shows.
Okay.
Should I wrap up with the movies and then?
Yeah, let's wrap the movie. I think I got one more movie.
So the last movie of note that I watched was the Liam Neeson Marlowe film that came out.
Oh yeah, you
recently.
mentioned that. Yeah.
It is perfectly consumable. It is exactly what it advertises itself as, which is a pulpy 1930s detective drama, and it delivers.
And it is a period piece, right?
Yeah,
it does
it takes place in 1937, 38, something like that.
L.A.?
L.A., yeah.
Cool.
And
I love that time and era.
yeah, and Marlowe is already, he's old and crotchety. He is just like trying to, one of the underlying stories is because he's been kicked off the police force, he has lost his pension. So he's like trying to do shit to like make up for that and get his pension back. Mm-hmm. But it is exactly everything that you would imagine it to be, but it's entertaining, and the cast is great. Like Diane Kruger's the femme fatale. Who the fuck? Alan Cumming is in it for just because, playing this like saucy Southern businessman out in L.A. I'm like, yeah, sure.
Alan Cumming being saucy? I don't understand.
Right? Yeah, you never would have guessed that it would have come from him.
He's gonna hurt himself stretching like that,
right? And then, who's the other performance the guy that I love from 30 Days of Night? Clearly Josh Hartnett. No, what the fuck is his name? Danny Houston. Do you know this guy?
Oh, yes, of course. He is Stryker in one of the X-Men movies at some point.
Yes.
He's in Succession. He's in Yellowstone. He's all over the fucking place. Like,
yeah,
he's great.
Danny Houston plays a Danny Houston character in this, but like,
yeah, he's basically
he's perfectly acceptable at it. And one of the things but they do, like, everything is just like tinted by nicotine and tobacco, so it's just like there's this haze and constant just like amber,
like the smoke yellowed the film.
yeah, like, and but it works, and it's. I think it's another one of those 90-minute movies, and it does exactly what it needs to do. And
sure.
If hardboiled detective stuff is your bag, then it's totally worth watching.
Dude, speaking of Danny Houston, looking back on his career now, it was fucking wild he did 30 Days of Night and played that character like that. Like a centuries old vampire who does not speak a word of English. Like, that is just insane for someone who basically plays a very similar type of role every time. Not that he's not great every time he shows up, but man,
people give that movie shit, but it might be one of my favorite
I love it. I really
vampire movies, and like it's a movie that I am always at the very least tempted to watch every Halloween if I don't get to watch it.
The only thing that is like the only blip for me with that movie is, and this is gonna sound like I'm making a joke, but it's a few too many days of night. Like it's a great like first 40% of a movie, and then you're like, oh, they have to kind of like they have to survive so many days that like a lot of days they're just like not, they're just kind of like bored.
Yeah.
And so there's a few where it's like if it had been like 5 days of night and they like did like each night was, that's the only thing where I like the concept's amazing and then you're so excited and then like all hell breaks when the vampires attack that first night is so insane. And but it's just crazy that like that happens and then like a bunch of people survive the next like month in like a very small space.
Yeah, I think if they were going to readapt the comic today, they would definitely do. I think 6-episode miniseries would be the sweet spot.
Oh yeah. That would be nice. That'd be nice.
But Netflix would order 13, and then we would have the same fucking pacing problem.
One episode is just a flashback.
Please, God.
I don't have anywhere to segue this, but Amanda's. I think she has not published it at the time of recording, but it will be published by the time this airs. On her Substack, she's covering Moonstruck, and I had never seen that, so we watched it. Wonderful.
How did you enjoy it? Yeah.
Loved it. Nicolas Cage and Cher are amazing. I realized I never really I have not seen a lot of Cher performances, or like a lot of her serious acting roles. Mm-hmm. God, she I was said to Amanda, I'm like, she immediately vanished into this character.
Yeah.
And then Nicolas Cage is.
Oh yeah, he's great.
It's always fun in the moments of a Nicolas Cage movie you haven't seen before he shows up, where you're like, okay, what Cage am I getting? And you just don't know. It could be anything.
We did we did that guessing game with Colors Out of Space, and it turned out exactly the way we wanted it to.
Well, you always want crazy. You always want the
I don't care. I ain't no freaking monument to justice. I lost my hand. I lost my bride. Johnny has his hand. Johnny has his bride. You want me to take my heartbreak, put it away, and forget?
Give me the big knife. That's why Con Air can disappoint me sometimes, because you're like, oh, he's definitely going to be Crazy Cage in this one for sure, and he's like, no, this is of all the times to be chill, he picked Con Air. It doesn't make any sense, but yeah, the man's an enigma.
Yeah, Moonstruck is one of Katie's family's favorite movies. They quote it often.
Yeah, it was. We were dying laughing at so much of it, like a classic, timeless comedy.
Oh yeah, which is it, and it doesn't get as much hoopla, I feel like, today when you talk about classic romantic comedies or anything. It's always you always mention When Harry Met Sally, but you don't always. I feel like Moonstruck doesn't end up in the conversation as often as I feel like it ought to.
I think it's just the time passing. Even Harry Met Sally doesn't get mentioned as much.
Yeah.
I think they just kind of fall out. I don't think modern society has a lot of room, for some reason, in their zeitgeist of a ton of older movies. So they there's a few that will keep going, and then there's a few that kind of get grandfathered in. It's just not many that stick around long term. And
I don't know whether that bodes well or terribly for our podcast.
I don't know, but someone's listening to these episodes in 2057. We just forgot to turn off the feed. That'd be amazing. I'll touch on it quick because I've seen it before, but I rewatched Escape from LA recently because I got the 4K of it.
Why? You wanted to have the fucking surfing scene in 4K?
It was on sale. But I will say, I actually think, and we might have to watch them both of them together with the four of us.
Why?
I think I prefer Escape from LA. because the Escape from New York takes itself a little too seriously, and it's a little too toned down. Yeah, and I like that Escape from LA is fucking bonkers stupid. It's absolutely dumb as shit. And
yes.
And it also is just it delivers on the action set pieces that Escape from New York you don't really get. Escape from New York always tricks me into thinking it's an action movie, and it's not really. I mean, it's objectively a far worse film and a truly terrible film. But man, I laughed my ass off at just the dumbness that happens on every frame.
God, yeah. Oh man, that's Peter Fonda, right? That he's surfing with.
Yeah, that's Peter Fonda.
Jesus Christ.
And what's crazy is he high fives him when they're surfing. Mm-hmm. Not only is it a bad scene, but it's out of character for Snake Plissken to ever show anyone camaraderie at all.
Yes.
and of all the times he picks is that. So I don't know. I think I have not watched them sort of like close enough together to be sure, but I think when the dust settles, I think I like Ellie more, and I'm the only person out there.
I want to be I want to be a fly on the wall at the production house where like the guy who's doing the negative scannings and says like, "Oh, what are we doing today?" No. Hey Jerry, you Escape from New York, right? You wanted the 4K. Say, why?
I'll even do Alcatraz. Just not. Don't give me LA.
And like just the person who's consciously like putting those frames into the machine and having to be like
such an arduous, long process. Yeah, from the negatives.
Yeah, I like. I do wonder about that particular corner of the 4K restoration thing of like what movies are just strange choices, and I feel like Escape from LA.
That's
is one
a pretty weird one. Yeah, it looks great. I'll say that. Looks fucking great. You can see every detail of those 720p CGI shots. Like it is just
God,
amazing.
I can't. My God.
So TV. Let's make the jump.
All right. One of the I was when we were talking about doing this episode, I was in the process of finishing, but it's a relatively quick one. That I finished last night was The Good Lord Bird.
Oh, I have no idea what that is.
Ethan Hawke. It is a adaptation of a book of the same name, but it is a historical account where it's a telling of the story of John Brown's rebellion. Do you know?
Oh yeah. Yes.
So
this cast looks good.
Yeah, Ethan Hawke plays John Brown, and the tone is like a little anachronistic, dark comedy style. So like there's some absurdist stuff going on. It's designed not to be like completely true to the events and the characters and the people, and the character that you're following is made up for the purposes of telling the story. But it was weirdly refreshing to see someone who's like just violently progressive.
Yeah.
And whose heart is in the right place, even if he doesn't necessarily execute it all that well. And it was just, it was a weird, like 7-episode foray into like this idea of what America was like just before the Civil War started and where the cultural temperature was, and kind of one of like him being one of the inciting incidents leading up to the Civil War.
What was it on, or did you say?
That one might. Showtime. I'm sorry, that's a Showtime show. Yeah, no, I mean, I would recommend it. Obviously, it's dealing with some fairly heavy material. To me, there's at least enough humor throughout and some lightness to be able to balance that. But I realize that not everybody's going to have that same reaction.
Right.
But I'm like, after watching that, I was like, yeah, I might actually read the book because I'm intrigued to deep dive a little bit more into it. And John Brown, I feel like as a figure in American history, doesn't get his due. Because he's somebody that like you generally don't learn very much about growing up. And then the common sentiment up until relatively recently was just he was just this crazy dude. Mm-hmm. But the more you read about him and the more that you get to kind of see and see Ethan Hawke live in this character, it's more just you feel you understand where he's coming from.
Got it.
And
that sounds great.
Yeah. And
how many episodes is that?
7 episodes. It's a relatively easy watch, and they're all I think maybe one might be over an hour, but like most of them are in the 45 to 55 minute range. So eminently consumable, provided that you are aware of the content. Yes.
No, I would love to learn more about that and check that out. That sounds good.
Yeah, one of the most memed sequences, if you're familiar with it, is John Brown screaming about the injustices of slavery before he lights a cannon and turns a slaver guy into pink mist.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes.
My name is Captain John Brown, and I am here in the name of the great Redeemer, the King of Kings, the man of the Holy Trinity, and I hereby order you to get Get in his holy name! Get! For he is on the side of justice, and you are on the side of chains!
That was the initial scene where I was like, I think at some point I should watch this.
Yeah, that sounds great. That's like that. What's that trailer I just saw for that Sisu movie of just like, it's John Wick, but he's killing Nazis. Like it's just.
Oh, yeah.
That looks fucking awesome.
I'm glad we're at that point.
Yeah, where we can just fucking roast these guys.
Yeah. I mean, like, at this point, like, come on, what are we going to talk about?
For sure. It's kind of a tangent, but I have a friend who wanted to watch Schindler's List because she had never seen it. She is Jewish, and it was just like a daunting thing. So I was like, well, look, we'll come over, we'll watch it. And so her husband came over, and we sat down. We like drank some wine and just like sat and just like experienced like Schindler's List, and it was like. And it was great, and it was very like we kept pausing and talking through it and stuff, and it was like very sad and moving and whatnot. And then at the end, once it was over, I was like, okay, now I'm gonna give you a pick me up, and I put on the Sisu trailer just to be like, don't worry, like we got him, we got him in the end.
Yeah. It's all right. It turned out okay, mostly.
But man, that movie is just like that is a crazy emotional ride to go through on that.
Yeah. It goes back to my sentiment about when I think I was talking about it with Connor about the sharp stuff of like, I recognize how great of a film Saving Private Ryan is. I've seen it many times. I understand what it's trying to do. I do not know if I will ever see it again in its entirety.
Schindler's List, you mean?
No, but I mean in that same vein of like Schindler's List is also a movie where it's like, I've seen it enough times. I know most of the major beats. Like I don't know if it's something that I will feel like I need to revisit in its entirety.
You really don't think Saving Private Ryan you'll ever revisit? That one I'll definitely watch again.
Not from start to finish.
Wow.
The older I have gotten, the more sensitive I have gotten to a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, I get that.
So I mean, and again, in a couple of years, my sentiments may change, but it's just like, damn, it is a lot, and when you're younger and you have the capacity for it, you do tend to overwatch a lot of that stuff. And so it's possible I've had my fill, at least as far as I think so far.
No, I mean, I totally get that. I mean, going back to TV, kind of in the exact same vein as that, I watched the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers once and always, made straight to Netflix. It's not even a TV show. It's just kind of like a one-off little movie.
I don't even know what this is.
It is.
I mean, I know what the Power Rangers are.
It's the original Blue Ranger and Black Ranger. They're old men now.
Yes.
And it just picks up with them still doing stuff and going on. And like the plot is the Yellow Ranger who passed away like a while ago. Yeah, a long time. She gets killed in battle early on, and it's just like it's like a full-on episode of the Power Rangers just shot today with like a lot of drones too, which is it's fine. And so the Yellow Ranger's daughter has to take up the mantle, and that's basically the movie. And it's just like just a full-on celebration of it's terrible.
And it's a feature length.
No, it is 59 minutes long. It is not even a fucking movie. It could not even hit an hour. And it's real bad. It's really, really bad, and it's really, 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 really cheap.
Well, it's I'm assuming it's still a Bandai production, so it's going to be cheap.
Well, it's still it's just basically it's trying to look. It's not doing at all the Elizabeth Banks version. It's like no, we want this to look and feel exactly like it did, just with just in HD basically. So in that sense, it's like kind of interesting to kind of see this stuff again. It's fun to like we kind of just like relived our little like childhoods a bit. But man, it's just like once you realize, you're like, oh no, this is it. Like it's not going to be like a clever twist on it. It's like just another little episode. So
where does it fall within the canon of the overall Power Rangers?
Dude,
is this its own side story, or
so part of the plot is like all of the other Power Rangers shows also exist, and they're happening simultaneously. So one of the things is like they have to call in for reinforcements. So they call like I don't even know any of this shit, but like they call the Pink Ranger from a different show, and like a Red Ranger from another show.
Yeah.
So they're all like, it's supposed to be like a coming together, but it's also like this is all they could get. Like they didn't. They're doing that because they could not get the rest of the cast.
They couldn't even get
but
Kimberly, huh?
No, she didn't want to do it. But
so you would not recommend that? Even I, having grown up with the Power Rangers, you would not recommend that I watch that? It would break my heart.
No. I'd say if you grew up with that show, throw it on, but don't feel like you have to finish it.
Okay.
Like, because it starts fast. It's like immediately cuts in with like a classic Power Rangers little action scene, and you're like, great. This is just get a little fill. The like karate moves are fun. One of the most entertaining parts, I swear to fucking God, is the absolute atrocious job they did of convincing you that the Red Ranger, who is now severely overweight, is the same actor that's in the Red Ranger suit when he's fighting.
Yeah.
It's a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece of editing to see that it's magic. It's movie magic that they managed to even attempt to convince anyone that that's the same person.
It is the reunion show that we all were asking for in our hearts.
It's also so cheap. There are a ton of shots of like a big group of people where like two of them are talking, where like clearly they did not give direction to the other people. So if you just watch anyone in the background of any shots, it's just like they do not know what they're supposed to be doing or who they're supposed to be listening to. And it's glorious. Like Amanda and I were at a certain point, we're like, okay, we have to see if we can find like a C stand in the background or something. Like there's going to be something somewhere.
Well, speaking of reunion shows, and this is something I will probably force Connor into talking with me about at a later date, but I finished the third and final season of Star Trek Picard.
Oh.
And I think I kind of liked it.
That's what I've been hearing. I do. Can I ask you this before you get into it? If I wanted to just watch the third season, could I just do that?
That's the only thing you should do. It has nothing. Okay. It has fuck all to do with the first two seasons, and watching the first two seasons were a depressing slog, especially the second season. You like if you're listening to us, you probably are aware of Red Letter Media. The two Star Trek fans in that cohort, Mike and Rich, talked about all of the seasons of Picard, and where they were at the end of season 2 is where I was at the end of season 2.
Yeah.
Of just like the heart and soul had been torn out, and just it was this depressing maudlin like
unmitigated disaster.
And then season 3 came out and was like, yeah, forget all of that happened. It doesn't matter. There are lines that essentially throw away every little thing, every major plot point that happened in the first two seasons. And I would, they did what Star Wars couldn't do. They got the gang back together. And they made it feel earned. They don't all show back up at once. You get them piecemeal over the course of the season. And when they're all sitting there on the bridge, you're like, this makes sense now. Like, you made it work in a way that didn't feel too contrived.
So are you excited for season 4?
But they're not doing it. That's the end of the series.
Really? This is it?
Patrick Stewart only signed for 3 seasons. And
that's great to hear.
So there are talks that they are going to do a spin-off show, because they at the very end, they do a setup with other characters that have appeared in the show.
Sure. To
go off and do their own adventure. And I would be interested in doing it. I would be interested in watching that if they end up doing something like that. But they story-wise, it was kind of it was whatever, but like they got the characters down, like how they talk and interact with each other.
Sure.
They righted a lot of wrongs from some of the more humdrum moments in Star Trek, not least of which was Nemesis. Like, it was one of those things where it was like, it had been, the end of Nemesis has gnawed at me since I watched it in theaters in December of 2002. And this show managed to...
Did Nemesis really come out in the 2000s? That blows my mind. Wow.
Yeah. And this show managed to kind of fix it.
Good.
So I would recommend it to anybody who'd been wary about Picard in general, because this is definitely not what it's been before. And if you enjoyed Next Gen at any point in time, I think it's totally worth watching. And then even if not, like, you get the gist of who these people are with isolated in the series. There's a lot of fan service, but like, it's not necessary to the plot.
Got it. Okay. Is that your last one? Did you
I have
mean to
one
end
more.
with Picard?
I have one. No, I didn't mean to, but the segue was too good.
Well,
I have one more.
that I mean that's what you, for my last one, you basically segued me up nicely, because I started knowing we were going to talk. I started the first episode of a show that's not dissimilar to Star Trek, and I'll let you have a couple guesses.
Babylon 5.
Nope. Nope.
Similar to Star Trek, but not Star Trek.
Not Star Trek.
Not Star
No Star Trek at all.
Farscape.
Nope.
Battlestar Galactica.
No, but that's on my list. I should really sit down and deal with that one.
It's not.
You're what?
It's not Stargate, is it?
It's not Stargate. You're way too high in the atmosphere. You're way up there. You gotta get wetter.
I already. SeaQuest.
It's SeaQuest.
Yes,
dude. I started SeaQuest. It's not great. I gotta say, it's really.
You
not
know
that great.
what? I do need to revisit SeaQuest. Have you heard about? Do you know the history of that show?
I went on a deep dive.
Holy
It's
shit.
really tragic. But I will say, for the first episode, because the pilot's not even a good metric of anything. The first episode, they are literally like, we're going to do Wrath of Khan in a TV pilot. They were like, let's just try to get people on board. Let's not go overly complicated with the exploration. In that, once I sort of realized what they were doing, then good to go. And like now, like, give it a few more episodes to kind of see what it actually does. But from what I've heard, that production sounds just like, it's really sad how hurt a lot of the people, especially like Roy Scheider, was with what happened.
Yeah, they are almost treated. I think there were 3 seasons, and they're almost all treated as practically different series.
Yes,
the way that they are. But the first one is the one that is truest to the spirit of the showrunner and the cast and crew.
Yeah, just to give the audience a sense of what we mean from what I've read. Really, it's just like season 1 is, so it's like a futuristic submarine. The oceans have been colonized, so it's Star Trek in the ocean, basically.
Yeah.
That's it. But season 1 deals with very realistic things that can happen in the ocean: ecological events, natural disasters. The types of even the further out things are more like grounded in like things that could happen.
There's a whole plot in one of the episodes that's literally just about brackish water, I think. Like the concept of brackish water. So like that's how deep, without puns sort of intended.
So it's very scientific, and it's still basically a fantasy show, but it was at least trying to sort of stay true to our own oceans. And then season 2, they apparently go for aliens and sea monsters and like black holes and weird random fucking anything you can think of. They just throw at the show, which must have been such a whiplash for people who were like watching every episode.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then season 3, they replaced Roy Scheider with Michael Ironside.
That I would be, because I'd like to see him in that kind of role. I think he could do a great job with that.
I have all 3 seasons. I'm just waiting to go. I've seen.
Where do you think I watched the pilot?
Oh, that's fair. Okay, yeah. But yeah, I'm very curious. I need to wait for the right opportunity to. I mean, if you wanted, I'm happy to do a watch party if it ends up being. I will. I'm definitely not going to do every episode of the show, but I will do more. And I'd happily just throw one on. Even we'll just fucking record it. Like, I'll just while we're going through, because it's an easy enough watch. I mean, did you ever watch? I think we talked about this last time we talked about SeaQuest. Did you ever watch the Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea show from? I think it was the 60s. No, I've not seen
it. It was like the Stones to Star Trek's Beatles. I loved it, though. It was on the Sci-Fi Channel right before I'd have to leave for the bus for school, so I'd watch one episode every morning.
Yeah.
And it's basically like it's what SeaQuest was a bit, but it's a little more season 2 SeaQuest, but in the 60s, so it's charming. You should look up some old episodes, throw some on, because it's a fun one. And then, have you seen the Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea movie?
No, I've not.
okay, that actually kind of hurt me to hear because it is. It's exactly halfway between like Star Trek and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Like
Okay.
it is, and
When did it
it's
come
actually
out?
kind of good. 70s, maybe
Okay.
early 70s. Let me see. Wait. Also, the main thing, 61 was the film. So the show must have been. I bet you the show predated. Unless the show came after the movie. Maybe that's
Was the
what
movie
happened.
like Backdoor Pilot, and they were like, "Yeah, let's do a show."
I guess so. So the movie was 61. So that was pre Peter Lorre, Barbara Eden's in it, Robert Sterling. It's a fucking cast. The thing with SeaQuest that I really could not get on board with, man, oh man, do I hate the design of the SeaQuest. It looks.
It's not good. It's like, I think trying to be like giant squid-y a little bit.
Yeah. I'm not.
I can't even really think of it in my head, which is it means it's not terribly great as a design if you can't just like kind of generally picture it.
No, yeah, exactly. But I will say the Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea ship, submarine, I adore. And it's just this. It's basically a normal looking.
Oh, I've totally
submarine.
seen this thing.
This is iconic to me. And this is, it's really, really cool. Just like just a slightly different thing. It's like it's the kind of thing where it's like the most advanced submarine in the ocean. And it just kind of, goes around doing its thing. But yeah, we should definitely watch Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea because it is a treat of like 60s effects.
All right. I am all for it.
Yeah.
Well, and I have no real pivot for this one because this one actually came very much out of left field. About a week ago, by the demand of my wife, but ultimately I kind of fell in love with the show, I watched Queen Charlotte, a Bridgerton story.
Oh, okay.
And it was kind of great.
I thought you were going to say Beef, honestly.
No, I don't have it in me yet to watch those types of shows.
Beef's good, I'll say that. But go back to Queen Charlotte. I keep wanting to say Latifah.
Queen Charlotte is kind of like the Book of Boba Fett of the Bridgerton series. Like it's aside from the general pantheon that they're doing for the whole series. So for anybody who's not familiar with Bridgerton, based off of a series of Bodice Ripper books. And each book is written from the perspective of one of the children in this specific family. And so the way that it's been organized, the show, is that each season is essentially covering a book's worth of material or so forth. Mm-hmm. But early on, the character of Queen Charlotte became kind of this fun thing that all the fans were talking about. So they came out with a little 6-episode story about Queen Charlotte, who was married to the Mad King George III, who was king during the Revolutionary War.
The bad guy.
And the Napoleonic Wars, actually. What's up?
Oh, the good guy.
Yeah. And it lilts a little bit more into historical drama than the other seasons. Mm-hmm. Which is probably why I liked it, but it's also like just the costumes are really colorful. It's a Shondaland production, and the way that they do with Bridgerton is that they sort of integrate they do a lot of like mixed casting of just like, Queen Charlotte's black. Like that's just the way that it is in this show. Mm-hmm. And like there's a whole thing about like this idea of this is not true to history, but the concept in the Bridgerton world is that Queen Charlotte's marriage to King George is part of this great experiment to integrate the people of African descent who are citizens of Great Britain into British society.
Oh,
so that's one of the through. It's done in a way that I thought
that, but tasteful. Yeah, no,
but tasteful. Yeah. And it also follows my favorite character from the mainline Bridgerton series, which is Lady Danbury, who's kind of like a Machiavellian, but like for the forces of good character. And so the show switches between two timelines of like where the Bridgerton stories are taking place and then back in the 1760s when Charlotte was a young girl who had just married King George. And
it's Julie Andrews.
She narrates it. She narrates all the Bridgerton series.
I thought she had passed away quite a number of years ago.
Don't say that now, because then she's going to end up on an episode of Pete and Alex's Who Died.
Oh Christ!
But like it was a really just heartfelt story of like how you make a relationship work in very strange and trying circumstances.
Right.
Because it's ultimately, and like, again, not necessarily strictly true to history, but it's about, you know, a woman who is married off to a man against her will. And this man, who initially seems charming, has a mental illness that is ultimately going to claim him. And how do you work with that? What
is that why they called him that? I thought.
Mad King George. So historically, and this is true, Mad King George suffered from an illness that historians have debated over what it was. The current general theory is some form of severe bipolar. And there were periods over the course of his life when he was younger that he would just go through bouts of being entirely unable to run the country. And then the final bout lasted for the rest of his life, for like 20 years, to the point where they actually appointed his son, George IV, as the Prince Regent. So he became essentially the king, but because his dad wasn't dead, he was the Prince Regent, which is why if somebody says Regency era, it's that like early 1800s Napoleonic War period up through like 1820. Because George IV was essentially the person who was, you know, who was doing speeches in front of Parliament, who was, you know, making public appearances. George III was, for all intents and purposes, locked up in his own home because he could not function. By the end, like, he did not know that his wife had predeceased him. It's a sad story, regardless of the fact that, like, you know, you can say what you want about colonizer, you know, monarchs weren't necessarily the greatest people on the planet, but like, it's like, oh yeah, I, as a human being, I understand the
sure, you can get, I'm not going to lose sleep, but like, I do get, it's
sorrows, prayers.
The show tells it in a way where like you can divorce the history of it because you know that it's not trying to be accurate to history or any of the trappings of it. And just, it's a story about two people who are in a relationship. And it was very, very moving. And I would honestly recommend it to anybody who's looking. And it's 6 episodes. Again, paced really. It's one of the shows I have seen recently that is really paced very well. There's no filler. Every episode has a thing that happens. There's goals that get accomplished, and you don't feel like you're being strung along. And by the end of it, you feel like it is still all encompassing its own series.
SeaQuest has a talking dolphin.